This is Charlie Wilson. Here, he's inside Afghanistan, in the war zone, a few miles from Russian combat troops.
One of the things that I really would love to have done was to see the early Charlie with his big 10-gallon hat and driving the convertible, actually yelling, yeehaw.
We were just wondering what you do for a living.
I'm not a police officer, if that's what you're asking.
No.
I'm a member of the U.S. House of Representatives.
I'm sorry?
I'm a congressman.
Are you kidding?
No, I'm absolutely serious. I'm Charlie Wilson. I represent the Texas 2nd Congressional Texas. He had some brand of attraction and charm that was undeniable.
He was a character described as larger than life, also described as one of the only guys ever known that could strut while sitting down.
He's an impressive physical specimen. You know, he's very tall. He's got that, he's got a big, massive voice. He's got all the Texas stuff that goes along with him, the belt buckles and the suspenders and the cowboy boots, and he's also incredibly charming. He came in, and every single woman in the office said, "Oh, Charlie, he's got something." He's very sure of himself, and he exudes a huge amount of confidence, which is attractive, which is sexy, which is in fact admirable. He told us point blank at the very beginning, "I don't care how you portray me. I don't care what you show me doing. I don't care if you show me drunk, doing drugs."
Well, he's saying he witnessed you doing cocaine 9 times in a fantasy suite in Las Vegas.
Well, first of all, I plead guilty to all the sins that you mentioned, whiskey and the girls and all those things. And I've, possibly because of advanced age, I have cleaned up my act. But I don't regret any of that. As a matter of fact, Gus always thought that it was, and he said after it was over, that it was the best cover he had ever seen. Because the Soviets that were following Congress just absolutely didn't take me seriously. And that turned out to not be smart on their part.
$35.5 million?
Which you'll be able to appropriate.
Yeah.
Without the press asking questions about it.
You know, there's good news there because the press is going to be busy asking him about a weekend in Vegas and his pending arrest on charges of narcotics possession.
Oh, Gus.
I'm just explaining to him that as long as the press sees sex and drugs behind the left hand, you can park a battle carrier group behind the right hand, no one's going to fucking notice.
Charlie was one of those lawmakers on the Hill that had never been taken very seriously. He'll tell you himself that he had a congressional district where nobody much needed anything. All they wanted their churches and their guns and to be left alone. So Charlie had no trouble getting reelected, but the core of thinkers in Washington would classify him as one of the 25 least effective congressmen at any particular time.
He was very well liked, and he was able to make a lot of deals with other congressmen and committees and say, "Hey, I'll give you this if you give me that." And he became very influential and was very well liked. He was fair. He never promised anything he couldn't deliver. He treated everybody as he does now. He's so much of a gentleman. He's such a kind man. He doesn't attack anything or anyone. He's careful. He might look askance, he might raise an eyebrow, he might question, but he's just not that kind of guy. Charlie Wilson is the only politician I've ever met, with the possible exception of Castro, who is in the moment and is not pre-recorded.
And I love sticking it to the Russians. And I think most Americans do. They need to get it back, and they're getting it back.
He's talking about right now, and he answers your questions right out of his head. He doesn't have anything ready.
But after they made the decision to fight to the end, no matter what they had, then I said we just simply can't allow people this brave and this deserving to sell their lives cheaply.
He wanted to defeat the evil Soviet empire. He wanted to bring freedom to the Afghan people.
They're digging in for the last stand at Gardez, and they're going to lose. And I love it.
The first time I heard it, his name was from a fellow named Abdul Rahim, who was a prominent spokesman for the Mujahideen, who told me Charlie Wilson is the most important man in Congress for us fighting this war. That's the first time I heard about it, and then I began to learn more.
600 Afghan guerrillas go back to war inside Afghanistan.
Afghans were saying, "You Americans are so crazy. Why do you think they want Afghanistan? There's no oil, there's no money, there's no manufacturing here. They don't want us. They want Pakistan, and they want to be able to fly to the Straits of Hormuz. And when they can fly to the Straits of Hormuz, and your oil is cut off." The United States ignored this threat because there was such an involvement in the Iran-Contra situation. Jimmy Carter had been saying that it was a tribal war. So we went to Afghanistan. We have film of it. We came back, we showed it to everybody that we possibly could, and we showed it to Charlie, God bless him.
Joanne persuaded me to go to Afghanistan and to take a look myself because she was desperately trying to get someone interested in it. So she deserves a lot of credit.
Don't underestimate me, Charlie. Believe everything you've heard.
What exactly do you want me to do?
Go to Pakistan and meet with Zia.
Zia?
Mohammed Zia-ul-Haq.
That was an experience that will always be seared in my memory, was going through those hospitals and seeing especially the children with their hands blown off from the mines that the Soviets were dropping from their helicopters.
And this was hard work. It wasn't going to be all that easy.
That was perhaps the deciding thing, and it made a huge difference for the next 10 or 12 years of my life because I left those hospitals determined that as long as I had a breath in my body and was a member of Congress, that I was going to do what I could to make the Soviets pay for what they were doing.
He gave blood when he was in the camps. He got with the people. He made friends with people that are still his friends. Charlie is not a person who pulls rank at all, or even feels that he has any rank. He never pretended to be anyone other than he was.
Thank you, Elaine. I usually don't get waited on quite that way.
Anybody would be taken with them, and anybody would have been very turned on about the fact that they were successfully fighting the Soviets and that they were still in their mountains.
The guns of Afghanistan keep firing.
I think that when they're aroused, they're probably the world's finest warriors. They are recklessly brave. They know no fear.
This is probably the most heroic resistance to tyranny in modern history.
I was just impassioned by the resistance, and I was impassioned by the obvious, harsh terror tactics that the Soviets were using on these somewhat defenseless people. So I came back, and I spent the next 10 years of my life, every waking moment, to increasing the amounts of money and to making sure they got the right weapons.
I don't think we're doing as much as we could, and as much as we should, and as much as they're entitled to.
But what else did they need?
Same thing you give us, AK-47s, AK-74s, AK-MS. Soviets didn't come in Afghanistan on a Eurail pass. They came in T-55 tanks. The fighters need RPG-7 anti-tank grenade launchers, Katyusha 107mm rockets, wire mines, plastic mines, bicycle bombs, sniper rifles, ammunition for all the above, and frequency hopping radios and burst transmitters, so these guys are so fucking easy to find. So I've written it all in a report you can read. You'd be the first one who did.
And at that time, this is really important, that most people saw the Afghans as simply wild men with swords in their teeth. And people were very wary of supporting the Mujahideen, supporting the Afghans. But the man who really pushed it harder than anybody else, and I had the Afghans to tell me, was Charlie Wilson.
Some of my friends gave me that Stinger, which shot down the very first Russian helicopter.
It was always my thought that if we could get them something sophisticated to be able to at least destroy the Soviet tanks and to be able to defend themselves against the Soviet helicopter gunships, that they conceivably could drive the Soviets from their land. Nobody believed that much except me and Gus Avracatos, who was my great friend, kind of a rogue CIA agent, as I became kind of a rogue congressman, perhaps. But we made it work. We made it work. And it was a great 10 years. ended with the Soviet Army with their tail between their legs in 1989, marching out of Afghanistan, a defeated army. Unbelievable.
And what he did was convince Congress back in the 80s to provide several $1 billion worth of weapons to help what were then called freedom fighters drive the Soviets out of Afghanistan. And it worked.
We started out in 1979 with $5 million. We ended up in 1989, 10 years later, with something in excess of $2 billion.
This is what we always do. We always go in with our ideals and we change the world. And then we leave. We always leave. But that ball, though, it keeps on bouncing.
What?
The ball keeps on bouncing. We've spent billions. Let's spend $1 million on HR 118 and rebuild the school.
Charlie, nobody gives a shit about a school in Pakistan.
Afghanistan.
Wilson says America is making the same mistake it made before. He warns that if the U.S. doesn't help the Afghans to rebuild their society, the country could easily descend into another civil war and be taken over again by terrorists.